Okay, let's get started. We're doing a deep dive today into a guide on planetary magic, specifically in the Western Esoteric Tradition.
That's right. It covers working with the seven classical planets, uh, the ones known since antiquity, and their associated spirits.
Our goal here is really to unpack the key ideas from this guide, the history, the methods, the entities involved, sort of a shortcut through some pretty dense material.
Exactly. We want to get to the core of it. And that core really hinges on this ancient idea, as above, so below, that connection between the heavens and earth.
And it's not just passive, like astrology, where you're just reading influences. This is active engagement, right? Working with these planetary energies.
Absolutely. It's a hands-on approach.
Right.
The roots go way, way back. We're talking about the seven wandering stars: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn.
The ones visible to the naked eye.
Precisely. Civilizations like the Sumerians, maybe 7,000 years ago, they already recognized them. And crucially, they linked them to their major deities.
So that association between a planet and a certain type of divine power or influence started very early.
It really did. And that's the foundation. This wasn't lost knowledge either. It carried through Greek times, the medieval period, the Renaissance. It's a continuous thread.
Fascinating how persistent that idea is. So when the guide talks about working with these planets, what does that actually mean in practice?
Well, the core concept presented is about change. It's about either increasing the positive qualities linked to a planet or maybe transforming or mitigating the negative ones. You're aligning with these subtle forces.
Okay. And each planet has its own domain, its own type of work.
Yes, the guide lays it out quite clearly. The sun is often for works of wealth, vitality, success; Mercury for the mind, communication, business; Venus for beauty, love, attraction.
Makes sense. And the moon?
The moon is for mystery, intuition, dreams, clairvoyance, the hidden things. Mars is about power, courage, overcoming conflict.
Right. Assertiveness.
Exactly. Jupiter is for expansion, fortune, ambition, generosity. And Saturn deals with form, structure, duty, limitations, but also discipline.
So if someone had a specific goal, say wanting more courage, they'd look to Mars.
That's the idea presented. Or, if you wanted success in an exam, you might work with Mercury. Improving your luck or fortune, that points towards Jupiter. The guide lists quite a few specific intentions.
Like attracting someone. Venus.
Venus, yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe business success, which could be Mercury for the communication aspect,
Yeah.
or the Sun for overall success and recognition.
But it's not all positive, is it? You mentioned negative qualities, too.
Oh, definitely. The guide stresses this balance, using the Sun again. Positively, it's friendship, growth, joy. But the negative side could be things like arrogance, boastfulness, unchecked ambition, even tyranny.
So it's about working with the energy consciously, not just blindly invoking it.
Precisely. Understanding both sides of the coin is key. And that leads us to another really critical element emphasized in the guide.
That's right. When you do the work matters.
Immensely. And this isn't some obscure detail. It's embedded right in our language. The days of the week.
Sunday, Sun's Day, Monday, Moon's Day.
Tuesday is Mars through T. Wednesday is Mercury, Woden. Thursday, Jupiter via Thunder. Friday, Venus through Frigg. And Saturday, Saturn's Day. It's a direct link.
It's amazing how that survived. But the timing goes deeper than just the day, doesn't it? The guide talks about planetary hours.
It does. And this system is ancient, too. Egypt, Greece, long before the medieval grimoires most people think of. But these aren't the 60-minute hours we use now.
They're unequal hours. I remember reading that part.
Exactly. You take the time between sunrise and sunset, divide it by 12, that gives you the length of a day hour for that specific day. Then you do the same for the period between sunset and the next sunrise for the night hours.
And the length changes with the seasons, obviously. Longer day hours in summer, shorter in winter.
Correct. The calculation is straightforward once you know sunrise and sunset times. The first hour of daylight belongs to the planet ruling that day. Then the hours cycle through a specific, traditional sequence of planets.
So ideally, if you're doing a Mars working for courage, you'd try to do it on a Tuesday, during one of the hours ruled by Mars.
That's the principle, yes. Aligning the time with the intention and the planetary energy. The guide also mentions factoring in things like planetary retrograde periods.
How does retrograde fit in?
Well, when a planet appears to move backward, its energy is often interpreted as more inward-looking, perhaps delayed, or maybe even a bit disruptive. So a practitioner might avoid certain workings then, or approach them differently, focusing on internal reflection related to that planet's themes.
Okay, that adds another layer of complexity. Now, beyond the energies and timing, the guide talks quite a bit about working with specific spiritual entities.
Yes, this is a major part of the tradition described. It focuses on two main groups, the Olympic spirits and the Cabalistic spirits.
Let's start with the Olympic spirits. What are they, according to the guide?
They're presented as very powerful beings, planetary governors or stellar governors from the firmament. Their job, essentially, is to administer fate, manage earthly affairs related to their planet, and teach cosmic secrets.
Where does this idea come from?
Texts like the Arbitel of Magic are key sources mentioned. These spirits have specific characteristics. They rule over vast numbers of lesser spirits, often in multiples of 7, and they even have designated ages or periods of rule over human history.
Ages of rule. That's interesting.
Yes, the guide makes a fascinating point connecting the current era, roughly 1901 to 2390 CE, to the rule of Ophiel.
Ophiel. Like, which planet is that?
Mercury, the spirit of Mercury. And think about it, the last century plus has been defined by communication, information technology, commerce. It's a very mercurial age.
Wow. That's quite a connection to draw. So how does one supposedly work with these Olympic spirits?
The guide describes a pretty formal process. You need the right spirit for your goal. The correct planetary day and hour are essential. You prepare a specific seal or symbol for the spirit, often using a crystal ball or mirror as a focus point, the receptacle.
And then incantations.
Yes, specific conjurations, preliminary ones to set the stage, then the main one. You have to state your request very clearly. Then, critically, give a formal license to depart, followed by a banishing ritual to close the space.
Seems very structured.
It is, and the guide includes a significant warning. These spirits don't just show up on demand, especially if the magician's motives aren't pure. It even suggests that calling them improperly could attract lesser entities or, quote, demons if done by false magicians.
So there's an ethical dimension, a need for sincerity.
It seems implied, yes. Purity of intent matters. It also mentions practical things like needing specific tools, a properly set up altar, and so on.
Okay. What about the other group, the Cabalistic spirits? How are they different?
They fit into a more explicitly hierarchical structure derived from the Kabbalah. Think of it like a ladder descending from the divine.
A ladder? How so?
For each planet, there's a connection going from the highest divine level down through the planet itself, then an archangel associated with it, an order of angels, a specific planetary intelligence, and finally, a planetary spirit.
That's a lot of layers. What do they all do?
The archangels are like the overseers, directing the pure planetary energy. The intelligences, often called angels, are generally seen as benevolent, embodying the planet's positive qualities. They manage the spirits and are often invoked for creating positive amulets or talismans.
And the spirits, the guide calls them demons sometimes.
Yes, or just spirits. They're presented as more raw, ungoverned planetary force. They need direction. According to the guide, they're also used in making talismans and amulets, perhaps for more forceful effects, but they need to be handled carefully.
Can you give an example maybe for the sun?
Sure. For the sun, the hierarchy mentioned is Archangel Michael. The angelic order is virtues, or Malachim. The intelligence is Nakel, linked to success, honor, travel, and the spirit is Soreth.
Soreth. Does the guide describe what these spirits are like?
Oh yes, quite vividly sometimes. Soreth is described as having reddish gold skin, moving very fast, and a sign of its presence might be the magician suddenly sweating.
Whoa, okay. What about, say, Mercury?
Mercury has Archangel Raphael, the healer, patron of travelers' knowledge. The order is Archangels, or B'nai Elohim. The intelligence is Tyriel, for learning, eloquence, divination. And the spirit is Thartharath.
Thartharath. Quite a name.
Isn't it? Appearance-wise, medium body, attractive face, maybe like an armed knight. The sign might be a feeling of fear or nervousness in the magician.
It paints a picture, definitely. These descriptions really bring the concept to life, showing the raw nature attributed to some of these entities.
Exactly. Mars, for example, has Archangel Camael, the intelligence Graphiel for conflict or stopping blood flow, and the spirit Bartzabel.
Bartzabel, what's his description?
Tall, possibly a dirty, dark, or red face, horns, claws, swift movement. And the sign could be an unexpected noise, like a bang or crash outside the protective circle.
Sounds intense. And these Kabbalistic spirits are connected to numbers and patterns, too.
Yes, specifically to numerical values and the kameas, or magic squares, associated with each planet. These are used in constructing their sigils.
Which brings us neatly to the practical techniques, the guide details. Beyond just timing and knowing the spirits, how do you apply this?
The guide covers several methods, mainly focusing on creating empowered objects and using specific meditation techniques.
Like amulets and talismans.
Exactly, and it's careful to distinguish them. An amulet is for protection, warding off negative things. A talisman is for attraction, drawing positive things toward you or enhancing personal qualities.
Okay, protection versus attraction. How are they made according to this guide?
There's a four-stage process described: preparation, gathering materials, tools; creation, physically making it; purification, and then consecration.
Purification, using the elements.
Yes, the classic four: cleansing with air, like incense smoke; fire, passing near a flame; water, sprinkling consecrated water; and earth, sprinkling salt or consecrated earth. It's about removing prior influences.
And consecration is the key step, charging it.
That's the core of it. You state your intention clearly, visualize the planet as sigil in its proper color above the object, and imagine that planetary energy flowing into it, imbuing it with your purpose.
Is there more to it?
The guide specifies intoning the names from the planetary hierarchy: archangel, intelligence, spirit, etc., a specific number of times corresponding to the planet's number, like 6 times for the sun and 9 for the moon. And it often culminates in a declaration like, "There is no part of me that is not of the gods," affirming connection.
Sounds powerful. Does it mention needing a magic circle for this?
For simpler talisman creation, maybe not always explicitly for the charging, but for more formal workings, especially involving direct spirit contact, a magic circle is described as necessary for protection and focus, usually a double circle with divine names and pentagrams.
Got it. What about sigils? You mentioned kameas earlier.
Right, kamea sigilization. A sigil is basically a symbolic representation, a pictorial signature, of a name or an intention.
And kameas are the magic number squares for each planet.
Correct. The technique described involves converting the letters of a name, traditionally Hebrew names for the Kabbalistic spirits, into numbers using a specific system, like Hebrew gematria. Then you locate those numbers on the planet's kamea and draw lines connecting them in sequence. That line pattern becomes the sigil.
The sigil is literally drawn onto the planetary square pattern.
Yes, derived from it. The guide notes that kameas were used for other magical purposes long before this sigil method became common, but this is a primary way sigils for these entities are created now.
Can you use it for personal intentions too?
Absolutely. The guide mentions you can use English words for your intent, convert the letters to numbers using a simple A1, B2 system, and draw the sigil on the appropriate planet's kamea that way.
Interesting. But not for the Olympic spirits.
Apparently not. The guide points out their sigils, which are well known in esoteric circles, don't seem to be derived using this Hebrew kamea method. Their origin is likely different or perhaps lost.
Okay. One more technique mentioned is planetary pyramids. What are those?
These are presented more as personal meditation or solitary working techniques. They're designed to help you build a deeper, more intuitive understanding of a planet's energy.
A pyramid structure. How does that work?
Symbolically, imagine a square base. Each corner represents one of the 4 traditional axioms of magic: to know, to will, to dare, to keep silent. The peak, the apex of the pyramid, represents the 5th axiom, sometimes called to go or to become, representing spirit or the attainment of the goal.
And this applies to planets how?
For each planet, you assign specific qualities related to its energy to those 4 base corners. Then you engage in a visualization and chanting practice based on that structure.
Can you give an example? Maybe the sun's pyramid.
Okay, for the solar pyramid, the guide might associate the corners with qualities like truth, will, beauty, and harmony. You visualize these, perhaps represented by symbols like a golden feather or a sword, at the corners of a golden pyramid base.
And you chant.
Yes, you chant a mantra related to the sun, like Famima, Greek for will, maybe 6 times the sun's number. The meditation involves visualizing energy moving between these corners, then rising up to the apex, integrating those solar qualities.
How about a contrasting one, like the moon?
The lunar pyramid would be quite different. Corners might represent creativity, imagination, dreams, the unconscious. Visualizations could involve the phases of the moon, new, half-full, dark moon at the corners of a silver pyramid base.
And the chant.
Chanting Luna, perhaps 9 times the moon's number. Again, you visualize moving energy between these concepts and raising it to the apex, aiming to internalize and understand lunar energy. Each pyramid uses the planet's color and specific mantra.
So it's a way to internalize the planetary archetypes.
Precisely. A structured meditation to build resonance. And there's an interesting detail mentioned for some pyramids, like Venus and Jupiter.
Yes.
An inner chamber within the visualized pyramid is said to be connected to the divine name Yah. It hints at a deeper, perhaps more mystical connection being forged through the practice.
That's quite profound. Now, this guide mainly focuses on the classical seven, but doesn't mention the outer planets at all: Uranus, Neptune, Pluto.
It does, yes, acknowledging their more recent discovery and integration into modern Western esotericism, even with Pluto's planetary status change.
So they're included in the system.
They are, though perhaps less exhaustively than the main seven. The guide provides basic correspondences and even hymns for them, suggesting the core principles of working timing, intention, perhaps even entity contact, though less defined, can be adapted.
What kind of concepts are linked to them, briefly?
Uranus is associated with things like the heavens, magic itself, sudden change, revolution, reality shifts. Neptune connects to the subconscious, inner space, the sea, the unknown, illusion, and intuition.
And Pluto.
Pluto retains its association with death, but also elimination, transformation through destruction and rebirth, mystery, the underworld, the hidden past, deep transformative processes.
So the system expands to accommodate them. Have kameas been developed for them too?
Yes, the guide mentions an 11 by 11 square for Uranus, 12 by 12 for Neptune, and 13 by 13 for Pluto, allowing those sigil techniques to be potentially applied there as well.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, from the ancient history of the seven planets.
To their specific energies and intentions, the vital importance of timing with days and those unequal hours.
The two distinct types of spirits, the Olympic and the Cabalistic, with all their hierarchies and vivid descriptions.
And on the practical side, amulets, talismans, sigils drawn on kameas, and those introspective planetary pyramid meditations.
It really paints a picture of a complex structure tradition aimed at, well, aligning oneself with these perceived cosmic forces for tangible change.
That seems to be the essence presented. Reaching for the heavens, as it were, but staying grounded in personal work and earthly goals. As above, so below, made practical.
So, as a final thought for you listening, maybe reflect on how these ancient ways of seeing planetary influence might echo, even subtly, in your own life. Do you notice patterns or energies that resonate with these old associations?
It definitely gives you a different lens through which to view the world and maybe your own inner cycles.
And perhaps take this one step further, circling back to that mystery in the pyramids, the inner chamber linked to Yah. The guide hints that the ultimate journey might not just be outwards to the stars, but inwards, connecting that vast cosmic energy to the divine spark potentially residing within each of us. Something to ponder.